Hello. Yes. Hello. Hello. Mr. Sangmore is not here yet. Not his fault, mine. I neglected to send him the invite link until just now, and that is my fault. He should be there. He should have it now. Hold on. We were going to record these and put them up, but I thought the last one was smooth enough. We may as well do them live. Then perhaps we can field a few questions. I see there was already some questions while we were waiting. Someone says, tried to redeem the codes, didn't work. So that's a bit alarming. I'll get Mr. Sangmore to address that. He's really in charge of all things what's called Audible. And that whole scene with all of that, I rely on him for that. So let's see what he says about that. Maybe, did you try more than one? If you're there, I guess that's an obvious first question. I don't know what else to say about that. We'll have to check that out. Yeah, hopefully that's not a real problem and some sort of human error thing, perhaps. But yes, I don't like the sound of that. But hopefully he's got an answer for that. Someone else says, where's Mr. Sandwich from? He sounds like a New Zealander pretending to be a 170-year-old Englishman. Here he is. He can answer that for you. Hello.
Oh, hi, sir. Am I coming through loud and clear?
My headphones aren't right. One sec. Are you there? Can you hear me?
Yes, hi, sir. I'll answer the man's question. The surname is a pseudonym because being a right-winger in England is dangerous to your life and well-being, sir. So being someone who provides intel relay and general digested insights for the Britannic right wing, I, in general, simply pay attention to the signals and the noise and do my thing. But the leftist, liberal, spastic, psychotic mouth frothers, okay, they like to conduct predatory financial terrorism and harassment, etc., because they feel entitled to it. So the pseudonym is because I do not want my family targeted for being a right-winger. To answer his question very specifically, onto the topics of the evening that I wanted to deliberate upon.
Well, let's before we go into that, let's. There's the other
ahead.
question. I just want to confirm that about the fellow that says he can't redeem the codes. Did you look? Do we have an answer for him on that? Is there any idea what's going on there?
I'm not sure, but if he sends me a direct message on Telegram or if he's in your group, I'll go find him and we'll sort it out within 24 to 36 hours. It's been quite hectic over this weekend period.
Right.
I recently got one of my cats spayed. The female one that was having many litters has recently been spayed. And I have been somewhat worried about her general well-being, but she's coping incredibly well and fine, and she seems to be her usual self after only a day post-operation. Anyway,
that's good news, I guess.
Yes,
so yeah, so well, I don't know Vingul. I'm not sure who he is, but if he's in the chat again, you can tell us exactly what you did or what you tried, and let us know. And if anybody else has that problem, let us know, and we'll get to the bottom of that, because we can't have that, can we? And the other question was like, someone thinks you're a New Zealander pretending to put on an English accent. No, this is your real accent. I mean, you just have the haughty airs.
Yes, that's correct. Yes, that's correct. It's not anything that's put on or anything. It's just my accent. I'm bilingual English and Greek, by the way, but I am not genetically Greek. My English side of the family has 4+ generations of colonial history in East India with tobacco and sugar plantations, and therefore communists want my head on a pike, right? So
where's the Greek? Where's the Greek?
The matter.
What's the Greek part? How does the Greek enter into it?
Yes, so the Greek part is between the ages of 6 to 17. I grew up on the island of Corfu, where I learned Greek and went to the public school there. Anyway, the Greek education system is incredibly difficult rote learning, and how shall I put this? it's a lot more difficult. A flat out overall standards had not dropped as they have presently, right?
Right.
In both public and university standard schooling in Greece when I grew up there, right?
Right.
So everything was incredibly strict. Everything was incredibly what's it called? High standards of education, as in the teachers knew that they were there for a job, and if they didn't do it correctly, the parents would string them up because the
Mm.
parents had community in group. What's it called? It's called a siloros, but it's basically the community forum, right?
I see.
So all the villages and areas had community forums, and consider it a form of communitarianism, whereby if the teachers say or do anything, or if are not strict, right? So the parents are dealing with unruly children, right? And they want the teachers to be extra extremely strict. And if the teachers are not extra extremely strict, then they get a mouthing from the parents. So
Mm.
instead of what happens in America, where the kids run wild, etc., in Greece it's the opposite, where the parents are telling the teachers to be as strict and disciplined as possible with the kids,
Beat
right?
the ruler.
So
Yeah.
that's
I love it.
yeah, so, and throw chalk at them if they disrupt the class, and books at them if they are excessively unruly, and crazy shit. Anyway,
Well, do you miss?
no,
Let me just ask
no
before we move on.
whippings though.
Do you miss the Corfu days, or are you
No,
happy to live?
absolutely not.
You do not. You do
Yeah,
not.
I
Okay.
don't like having a shitty internet connection up on the top of a goddamn godforsaken mountain in the blistering heat. No, I prefer the more temperate climate of the United Kingdom,
I see.
and you know, if it's
Okay.
always sunny, you get sick of it, right?
I see.
Rainy
I see.
days rainy days allow you to focus and to what's it called? I don't know. People on rainy days are less I don't know, aggressive or psycho than they usually are, compared to sunny days where they're just exhausted from the heat and angry from it.
I see. I see.
Passively, yes, passive anger. And anyway, this is unrelated to the main topics of the
True.
evening, but
True.
so the main topic of the evening that I personally would like to present is what is the special source, right, that binds the bullshit of the liberal psychotics and their worldview and the civilization state that they create, that we are seeing, the dysgenic and dystopian and degenerate, hyper-Americanized, hyper-Weimarized West, right? So when we take a magnifying glass to it, we can make a few prognostications, etc. But I want to go to what is the special source that binds it all together. And I postulate that it is as follows. Um, Emotional blackmail, and blackmail entrapment, right? So the core ideology that they are espousing is a form of blackmail entrapment to a cult of weakness and vice glorification. So the virtuification of vices is a form of cult in-group ideology, right? So the way that I would put this is cult of degeneracy versus Mithraic cult of self-actualization. In terms of the psycho-philosophical cycles, very broad ones. Let's just use the term zeitgeist, okay? In terms of the ideological zeitgeist of the present time, right? You have cult of degeneracy on the one hand, and on the other side, you have cult of what the fuck is this? I don't want anything to do with this. We can definitely carve a better path than this. Trash, right? So,
Mhm.
if you take a overall 360-degree view of the ideological decay and poison, right? So what you want to study, right, in your enemy's ideology is not only contradictions and hypocrisy, but I don't know, trained psychopathologization of enemies
Oh.
is cult in group behavior, right? So when you look at lists, right, of what kind of behaviors cults have, right, um, they overlap very much with the cults of the liberals, right? Whereby you get virtue points for either being a victim or by punching Nazis, in quotation marks, or by conducting predatory financial terrorism against them, or by silencing them, etc., etc. We all know the gist. So, they have their own worldview, and it's utter dog shit, and it's predatory and evil. So, when we
Right.
spoke the prior time, I don't know how many of the audience this evening have watched the prior video, but I repeated a phrase whereby it goes as follows, and this is key to understanding the decay and the rot, right? So, you're trying to understand with a magnifying glass the rot and the decay, right? So, it's bullshit, it's evil, and it's evil bullshit. This is the unholy trinity of liberal psychosis. Okay, bullshit, evil, and evil bullshit. Right, and anything can be used to justify and normalize and glorify it, etc. So long as it is bullshit, evil, or evil bullshit. Right. So
Mm.
yeah, that's the general gist of the topics that are swirling around my head as I tend to my duties in providing digested insights to my own, while the West collectively slowly burns. So
So
that's
that you're
what's going
saying
on
you
in my
wanted to
mind.
reiterate that phrase and suggest that is the special sauce that you speak of. Is that what you're saying? The special sauce. I thought you
Yeah,
were
yes,
heading to a point of.
yes, pardon. So the special source that binds it, I forget. There's multiple points that I've been thinking about. Um, One moment it'll come to me. It's
Okay.
basically the worldview and what holds it together, right?
Right.
So you have to have ample bullshit, evil and evil bullshit. That's one. It is founded on emotional or financial blackmail, right? And That's the special source. Yes, I remember now. The special source is cult of weakness. The veneration, normalization, and glorification of a cult of weakness as if it were a virtue, right, is the special source that binds together all of the, let's call them out groups that seek to become one greater in group, as Marxist theory goes of, what's his name? Horkheimer, I think his name is. This is from the works of Horkheimer, not of, what's his name? Uh, it eludes me.
That's right. Don't
Pardon
worry.
one moment. Oh, what's his name? Gramsci.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the poisoning of the civilization state is more the work of Horkheimer compared to Gramsci, is the point that I was making. So imagine that you're dealing with a group of decay weavers unto civilization, and you need to put a magnifying glass to their methods, their means, and their, dare I say, special sauce, right? And the special source is not just the sexual revolution or whatever, the hippies or whatever. It is, in general, the lowering of standards and the normalization of vices, right? So if you normalize vices over time, you get a weak and servile chattel population, which is what they want. And this can be discerned by, excuse me, studying history in the present, right?
Okay. Right. Yeah. So that's all true. That's
Yeah,
fine.
that's
Good.
the end of
That's
the diatribe, sir.
okay. So
Do you have any questions or inquiries? Pardon.
I do. Yes, I would about that. I mean, I thought you would have notes more specific to the book, but this is specific enough to the topic. We can talk about it and
I
relate it to the book.
believe that it is tangential to the point of the book, whereby there is a general decline of art, which parallel to this is a general decline in culture, and
Yes.
parallel to this is a general decline in civilization. And
Yes.
I want to understand the special source, right, of the
Yeah.
decay of the rot. Okay,
Right. Okay.
so
Yes. Yes.
it's as simple as I
Well.
genuinely
Okay.
give a shit about the ingredients of the rot, right?
Right.
And the
Right.
decay weavers.
Yes. Okay. Well, this is an observable and thing we can look at and talk about, but there's a. This is where, say, you're. I know you're something of an atheist, or it goes beyond a materialist explanation. I think this is where we get into the kind of talk that Julius Evola, I think I mentioned in the book, I'm sure I do, and the Kali Yuga and so forth, where everything that happens, it seems like culturally in human civilization and affairs, eventually gets reversed. So this was most observable in the long dynasties of Egypt, where over time, over as the thousands of years rolled on, and they were surviving as a civilization, religiously, anyways, the Osiris as the chief god would eventually fade and flip, and then Set would become the devil character would become the chief god, and then they would rotate back again, just over time. And it's like they understood, even maybe I don't know if they understood or if they were doing it on purpose or incidentally, but they survived for so long by like keeping this rotation. So it seems like in life, in the laws of change applied to the universe, everything that is successful and good must have its reverse, suffer a reversal and fall out of favor and become the opposite of what it was, hated and reviled, and what was considered good or bad, or what was considered bad becomes good, to certain varying degrees. This seems to be a cycle that occurs that people have observed. Someone like Evola thought, associated with the Kali Yuga, and this is like really, superstitious or esoteric, let's say, way to look at things, but it seems to have some bearing, and you can see that it's something that occurs, that nothing can stay in full light of favor forever. I mean, some things can, like the concept of goodness, like concepts and things that are outside specific human culture, that are like sort of almost more like the forms of Plato, basically, like the eternal existing concepts. But as we see now, what was formerly good is considered evil and bad, and maybe it must suffer this cycle. Now, according to Evola, the beginning of the end, is only the very, very beginning of a dark period that will go beyond. He noticed it happening at the end of his life, and say in the 60s and 70s, he saw the hippie revolution stuff, and he thought, well, I can see this happening, and things are going to fall apart and reverse. There's going to be a reversal. Everything that was considered sacred and good, aristocracy and nobility and noblesse oblige and all this, will be considered, anything that was formerly considered noble and good will be considered evil and bad. And he said, but this isn't enough. There must, even from then, things must slip into a darker period where everything, when literally people are smashing their heads out on a rock for being what's the word they like, privileged, compared to the rock. This was a quote from somebody, I can't remember who else made that quote. I kind of botched it, but that's more or less the gist of it. When you reach that stage, then even beyond then, there's a period of spiritual darkness where the concept of civilization is all
By
cast
the
into the
way,
dark.
I would add an evolutionary and genomic factor to families that have the proclivity to comprehend the evolutionary dangers of liberal spasticism versus families that have fallen to the evolutionary dysgenic tendencies of liberal spasticism. So
Yes,
I
they have a greater
understand.
chance of survival, but overall,
Yes,
they still have to suffer through the giant change, the
yes.
cultural change of the mob.
I
So
understand the premise of Evola and
well,
his
it's not his. It wasn't
theory
his
of
premise. It
cycles.
wasn't specifically his premise, but he put it in those
Mm.
terms that he seemed to be very quite accurate in his prediction and talking about riding the tiger and so forth. But according to him, anyways, this is only the beginning of a dark. It'll get much worse. Maybe, hopefully, he's not. Hopefully not, and maybe he's wrong on that. Let's hope he's wrong on
I
that.
think that humanity as a species does possess the ability to discern objectively discernible evolutionary threats and dangers, as in demographers and very high level logisticians and anthropologists and social engineers and weaponized marketers. It's their job to notice patterns and signals in the noise. And so the social engineer is, I would refer to it as, the social engineer is the vizier to the pharaoh, right?
Right.
They serve and advise and conduct the empire's duties in the absence of the pharaoh if he's sick, etc.
Mm.
Right? So the vizier actually takes over the agenda setting, right? If the pharaoh is sick or incapable or lazy, right?
Right. Right.
So there's a thing that anthropologists talk about called agenda setting theory. And I think that Mr. Evola, without those terms, tried to set the agenda of oh, I can foresee and prognosticate everything being very dark. Here's what you can do to prepare for it and your future progeny for it, which is good and noble, etc., and good. But I think that the best thing to have in your family tree is acute awareness of bullshit, because bullshit has been elevated to such a degree that it is an evolutionary threat to your bloodline, aka in the scenario of hyper-feminization of men and women not having children. As in, if
Right.
your bloodline dies out due to liberal spasticism, then it is a genuine evolutionary threat to at least your bloodline and potentially the species. So
Yes,
I
exactly.
believe that in terms of not merely civilizational cycles of Evola, but in terms of evolutionary cycles in human history, liberal spasticism does not last very long. Simply have a brief look-see at Weimar. And after a brief while, it fixes itself due to the nature of cycles, due to the nature
Well,
of human patience limitations.
Weimar was a very specific closed, and where we have like a worldwide Weimar at this stage, so it was much smaller scale. It was almost like a beginning attempt, or I don't know, whatever you might call it, but it's much larger in scale now. It's not, that whole attitude to the world did not just vanish. It was actually, it only
Yeah,
increased,
but
right?
that's okay. People that are able to notice the patterns of the civilizational predatory tendencies and their organizations and lackeys will have a degree of immunity, not immunity, but protection to one, their bullshit, and two, the usual things that they
Right.
do in order to subjugate and pacify the populations.
Yeah, there's
So
a chance for
knowing
them.
about
There's
it,
a chance for them.
yeah, so knowing about it gives you an evolutionary, imagine that it is liberal psychosis is indeed an evolutionary threat, right? Imagine hypothetically it genuinely is. So how would you cure what's it called, something that threatens the species of this magnitude? Well, the cycles will tend to it, right, without going tending to any sort of fed posty bullshit that in fact they try to entrap you with that. And I have over 500 examples in my archives of people trying to entrap my crew and people. And so if ever anyone came knocking, I could just tell them, hey, look at these archives, we tend to our business, and what's it called, and don't make up bullshit, and tend to the liberal spastics making false accusations before I lawyer up. So the way that it works is that if you're high profile, you're not going to get targeted as much. If you're low profile, they're going to fucking mob you and shit. They already target the high profile people, and it's worse for the low profile people, right? So as things get worse in the cycle, the wheel turns, etc. That's why
Well,
it's
it
a
depends.
cycle,
Yes,
etc.
there's a chance of that, but there's many, many large, sweeping, and dangerous factors going on all at once, especially right now, including the threat of nuclear war. So there's many, and it's not even like a small likelihood that that may happen at this point. It's much larger than maybe it's ever been. I don't know.
That's okay,
So,
sir. The competence crisis is a far more pressing matter
well,
in my eyes
well, it's
compared
related
to
to that. It's
nuclear
related to
warfare.
that. People like it's
Yes,
related. So the people that have pushed
yes,
us
but
into that
but
position are incompetent.
the competence crisis can be discerned on a very day-to-day basis if you go to an inner city in the United Kingdom or a blue city in the States. So if you go to the
Or any
places
city, any
where,
city
yes, if you go, depends where in the world, sir. But in the West, yes,
in the West.
almost
Yeah.
every city, yes. So the thing is that you can objectively discern civilizational decay on the one hand versus things that are ephemeral. I think that we should always ensure that our assertions are always grounded in what's it called? How shall I put this? Something that is distinctly observable and can be discerned, right? So civilizational decay to the general population, right, is not easily discernible. I think that the people who are thought leaders and or provide briefings to the thought leaders ought ensure that one, they're immune to bullshit, two, they notice the signals in the noise, right? When it comes to civilization decay, right? So, specifically relating to the rot and decay of civilization, the general right wing, both of the states and in England, etc., and in Europe, etc., ought develop acute awareness of their bullshit, right? And also form parallel civilization states, economies, in group trading and preference. Because if you have a predatory, multilateral, globalist monstrosity that wants you dead and replaced, what else can you do other than form parallel economies with
Yeah.
a falling civilization state?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you have to always be pragmatic and focused on the causality webs of the topic, right?
Right. No, that's all.
And
That's fair.
yes,
But even that is, as you let, that's in a hopeful, hopeful, extremely hopeful situation. You can eke out a way to survive through this
yes. By the way,
parallel
sir,
subculture.
I mean the audience, and you and everyone in general, being immune to bullshit is going to turn into a positive evolutionary trait,
Oh yeah,
whereas being vulnerable to bullshit will turn into a dysgenic evolutionary trait,
a dead
and
end. Yes,
thus
a
yes,
bottleneck.
and thus this will play itself out in the cycles, I am certain,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. But
So
it's more like I would say it's people that notice patterns more than others, or not even that. I think the other type of people are more often just extremely, as Uncle Ted would say, they're hyper socialized. Their
yes,
concerns are
if they
primarily
can't notice
social,
the
and
patterns.
they not just
Mhm.
noticing patterns, but even if they notice them, their concerns remain their social status and much more. What does everybody else think of me?
The worst case
This kind of
scenario
thing.
is not noticing the patterns, because then you fall prey to them every single time, because they are actually out there to get you. When it comes to social engineers and weaponized marketing, for example,
No, I know, but
um,
I think their main problem is this over socialized. Their concern, but it's the same. The result is the same. There's a bottleneck, and they will not. If you suffer from being too social status concerned, you'll suffer the same fate. Yes, you have a greater chance of surviving to be a pattern noticer who not only notices them, is willing to act on them wisely as much as you can.
By the way, sir, there is no disagreement, I hope, with either you or the audience when I assert that liberal psychosis is an dysgenic evolutionary trend, and that it will play out in the cycles. So when we talk about the civilizational decay and rot, you can also talk about it from a purely genealogical dash phenotypical position, in terms of what portions of the population are going to do well versus which of them are going to live in squalor and be a drain, right? So
Right.
you can form predictive causality patterns, right, based on
Mhm.
the way that things are going presently and the way that you expect them to go in the future, and therefore plan for those scenarios in the future.
Okay, well, let
For
me just say
example,
this then.
yes,
Oh, so
go
just let me
ahead.
just say that if the whole idea is that your likelihood of survival is your ability to notice and plan for what you see happening, what you think is going to
For
happen.
evolutionary threats
Yes,
specifically,
yes,
for
exactly.
threats,
But there's
yeah.
a second layer to that, I think, and I find, which is that, as you can see, people that freak out and spaz out and act immediately and without thinking to the powers and the likelihoods at play, I think, obviously fall prey to a foolishness and a cocksureness and do not make smart maneuvers. Like as time has gone on here with this, noticing this cycle of reversal, let's say. So as we see, and as Evelyn was talking about, and many others, Spengler and others, what we're looking at is the reversal of it's not just the reversal of good and evil. It's as the ultimate goal is that the lowest strata of society becomes the kings. That is the goal of basically democracy and communism and the whole all of that liberal attitude. The end result is that the lowest type of people will rule over one way or the other through sympathy and whining and lying and oh woe was me stuff. They will eventually lord it over everybody else and hate them forever because they will be stupid and jealous and hate the wonderful things that were built and done before that they are incapable of. But to smartly navigate this business is not, especially to say, I've noticed over years that, say, the stuff we're doing, me writing this book, us talking about it, it's good, important thing for us to do, but in the long run, is it the smartest? It's smart enough as long as we can sort of
Oh, absolutely, sir.
keep that.
Let me
No, let me finish this
go
point though.
ahead.
So if you, like I am now, and I was when I wrote the book, more or less an accelerationist. I don't think that there's a way to alter or change this course of this ship. They're truly smart move if you are truly accept accelerationism. This is just me being a bit of a devil's advocate, or no, truly, I do think this. The is not necessarily is to do what you say. I would think the parallel underground separate society markets and things, but to do it discreetly enough and to be aware that you have to live within the system, and even in some ways being a bit of a chameleon and at least pretending or going along with the overculture a little bit. If you think in your mind that you're an accelerationist and you want it to just move it along faster, if you truly believe, if there comes a point when you accept and believe that there's no way to stop it, then you really do want it to speed up. In which case, we would be better off just being at least overtly in day, in the light of day, being more like normal people and just like, hey, yeah, great, more, more of this, more trash world. So that's a weird kind of. It is in a longer term, smart survival move. It is to keep that in mind a little bit, I think. I hope that makes sense.
Hmm.
It may not be the best
I
way to
think
describe
that
it.
we're dealing with masses of evil and incompetent morons, as in they have way too much money and more money than brains. Okay, when it
But
comes to
it's that low strata.
competence.
They're coming up.
Yeah, but here's the thing. The thing that gives me a degree of hope is the fact that the competence crisis is manifestly present.
Mm.
There is a reason why the blue states are becoming deserted, semi third world shit ridden shitholes. Excuse me. And there is a reason why
Yeah,
Texas is becoming a Americana ethno state of sorts, even though it encompasses ethno pluralism and whatever. Texas is doing pretty well. And it
is
is
it
doing
okay?
pretty well because, yes, in terms of finance, in terms of what's it called, living standards, in terms of education standards, in terms of average lifespan, in terms of
Isn't
yada
that where
yada.
Musk? Isn't that where Musk moved his business from California? Am I right? He moved it to Texas.
I
I
I
think he
don't
did.
recall, but Texas is turning into a tech hub specifically because they have the de facto cheapest access to oil there, and because the leftist cities are completely unlivable due to the competence crisis. So the term competence crisis came to my attention around about a year and a half ago, right? And I think that it was Mr. Edward Dutton who I first came across it from.
Mm.
Um, and since hearing the term, I see it everywhere, by the way,
Oh yeah, yeah.
in terms of civilizational degradation, in terms of cultural standards lowering, in terms of language standards lowering. I see the lowering of the standards of language, by the way, as a form of competence crisis,
It
right?
is. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because language is directly correlated with IQ, and having a population that doesn't speak well is directly correlated in my eyes with the lowering of their IQ over time.
It is
As in,
absolutely.
if you cannot communicate complex concepts at lightning speed by the age of 18, the education system has turned you into a servile golem rather than a free thinking, sentient, for lack of a better word, ensouled person, right? So
Right. That reminds me. I actually
they
said. I
made
actually saw.
golems.
Let me just say this in terms of
Mhm.
language. I saw what's it called? No Country for Old Men was on the other day, and there's that quick scene at one point. It's a Cormac McCarthy novel originally, or I think screenplay. But he says something to that effect. Like the two old sheriffs are talking, and he goes, "It all starts when they stop saying sir and ma'am. It all starts there." And he's right. I think but that's just like the art thing. The attack on a standard. You must remove or stop the standard. It's unfair or it's too strict. That's where it begins in terms of language. And it's always with language.
Mm,
It's always language games.
Okay, well, I think that we can turn it into the most TLDR version of this is despise the weakness cult and love the strength cult. If you were to put them into two very distinct and separate categories, the weakness as a virtue cult of the left, dash the aspirant approximation of a self-ascendant, self-assertive, Mithraic, sun-worshipping cult on the right. We're talking in broad archetypal ideological, what's it called? Forms here, right? So if you were forced to put these two in front of someone and you tell them, right, you choose this now, as is being forced in the world presently, one of them is incredibly evolutionary dysgenic, and the other is very highly persecuted and difficult to survive, but it doesn't lead to dysgenics and psychosis. Right. So social pathology and infectious psychosis are themes of the liberal cult. So I
Mm.
think it is very good and important when we talk about the decay of the arts and its parallels, the decay of culture and civilization, it is necessary always to look at what is the source, what is SOURCE, and what is the source, the SAUCE, right? So the source of it is the liberal psychotics, mouth frothing spastics, and the special source that binds them together is, oh, we're weak. Look how great we are in our weakness. Okay,
Right?
and the
Yeah, yeah.
solution
Mhm.
and the solution to this is maintain acute awareness of it and protect your family and your bloodline from the bullshit and the decay. Right. So all of this can be worked out with a little bit of causality pattern analysis and introspection. Right. So
Yeah, but that's too
that's
much
the
for the
problem.
average person.
No,
That right
no,
there is
no,
too
it's
much to
not.
ask.
If you explain to the average person that things are shit by design, let me explain to you how over
And
this
you've had
bottle
great
of
success with like the
scotch.
average person. I mean, really,
Yes,
they
absolutely.
just cut you
Even
off.
even
They cut
even
you
if
off.
someone leans to the left, they want to get rid of the present government because it is English politics are so incredibly controlled. It's very demoralizing speaking with anyone who talks about English politics at all because it's all WEF controlled. So the point is that when I try my best to be in the greatest of moods, um, I'm gonna tell them
What?
it's I'm going to tell them it's pretty bad, regardless of if they're left or right. None of them are happy with the
Yeah, they know it's
WEF
bad.
that
They
are
know
just
it's
a
bad. Yeah.
managerial class. They don't have an aspiration for greatness of the nation. They want to be managers of steady decline, right? And if you tell a leftoid, hey, it's not capitalists that want to conduct a steady managed decline of the nation, the workers, and the civilization state and the culture. You are doing it, motherfucker. It's not the politicians, it's the entire system of you. Right. And they don't like this, but they will agree with you and they'll say, yes, change needs to be. Okay. And then you tell them permanent and multi generational legal expulsion. Okay, you want to fix this problem? Permanent and multi-generational legalized legal removal of the incompetent and evil motherfuckers who have infiltrated every institution since Gramsci wrote his papers. Okay, so
Yes.
if they are incompetent and they are evil and they are psychotic, they can be discerned and they can be legally removed forever. Okay, so if you want to get very fucking serious about removing the evolutionary threat of liberal psychotics and spastics from the West and from power, you need to be very focused acutely on their removal. Okay, so there are ways to remove people from power if enough people collectively give a shit about their removal, right?
Well, I
So
okay.
you
So
know, you know,
you have more hope of that occurring than I do. I think I wouldn't say
the
anything like that will
masses can
happen
be
unless.
the masses, by the way, sir, can be pinpoint, focused, and hyper collectivized if things get worse enough for it to happen.
Yeah,
So
it
add
would
things
require an active disaster of a large scale and proportion that
which
really
is
upset their
inevitable.
upset. Yeah, it is inevitable, exactly. That would upset their comfort levels to a certain point. But even then,
Yes.
they're likely to act on the stupidest thing. And most of them are complete idiots. And the things that really rile them up to action are when bread or gas become too expensive or something that we
Yeah.
might consider more inane. When there's other things like when you're on the brink of nuclear war or and you have no borders in your country and things like this, they don't care about. They don't care about things like that. They care about
Yeah.
immediate sort of
I hear you, sir. The
things
thing
like
is,
this.
though, that I believe that any form of doom and gloom and black pill peddling is counterproductive, and you get more things done when you are acting rather than when you have hands clasped in prayer or you're moaning. So if
Well,
you
I do. Yeah,
actually,
yeah.
yes, so if
Well,
you actually give a
okay.
shit
Go on.
about exposing and defeating the Uni Party, tend to it. Just you and your next 5 generations tend to the abolition of the uniparty scum.
Okay, well, that's
Um,
a realistic. That was a realistic timeline, at least there. Yes, you're right. It will take a long
yes,
time, like unless there's
yes,
like a
but they are
disaster.
an
Yeah.
evolution. But the thing is, though, so they are immensely, easily, and objectively discernible evolutionary threat to the
See,
West and to
yeah.
my species. So I consider them in terms of you are an evolutionary threat. I and my progeny ought to be dedicated to your permanent legal removal. Right.
Right.
So there
Yes.
are
Okay.
ways to go
That's fine.
about reversing the civilizational decay. It just takes force of will with a capital W.
Well,
Right.
it'll take. I don't see. You can't hope. You can, as they say in America, rather crudely, you can hope in one hand and shit in the other and see which fills up first, as it were. So we can only in terms of something that requires an immediate disaster to wake them up and that like that may happen, it may not happen. And see, I don't find it a hopeless scenario to be realistic about the way things will go, because on top of everything else, you've in all these countries, massive separate power blocks have been imported, and they're there to stay. I don't see any. They're not even remotely near even being able to talk about that issue, and that's going to split and divide up each of these nations into smaller spaces of what eventually each power block of these
Yes, that's
different
fine.
beliefs and groups and things are
In
going to
the
split the
United
nations up.
States, yes, sir. In the United States, the blue states are going to turn into semi-third world shit-ridden shitholes, and the red states are going to turn into quasi-ethno states that look out for their own in-group and refuse and reflexively remove liberal spasticism from their law, from their courts, from their daily life, from their worldview, from the general civilizational zeitgeist that they're experiencing, right? So I think that the dysgenics and the weakness cult during the cycle of the present and the future quarter turning, let's say, um, it'll be fine because they are highly dysgenic and insufferable and evil. So, is it profitable from an evolutionary standpoint to be incompetent and evil? Right. So that's how I view it. Right. If you're
Right.
incompetent and
Right.
evil, good luck in the
Yeah.
what's it
Oh,
called in the gene
they will
war.
fuck. You're right. Yeah, they will fuck things up. They're fucking it up now, and it's only a matter of time before they seriously fuck it up. And
Yeah, but here's the
there's
thing.
a
When
mass
when
problem. Mass.
Yes, sir.
Go on,
Here,
yeah.
when we say competence crisis, by the way, it's not just how we personally view the competence crisis, it's how all the other fucking member nations, pardon of the world, are viewing the genuine competence crisis of the West and taking active measures to ensure that it doesn't reach their countries, or that if it does, they can mitigate it. Right. So when China, for example, or India, they have their problems too, of course, as well, etc. But when they are looking at a objectively discernible lowering of civilization standards and culture, right?
Yeah.
They take notes, right? They think that this is an important enough topic to take notes on, right? So when it
Yeah.
comes to civilizational decay and rot, right, that is the specific tangential topic that I would like to ensure that the audience gets to receive a summary briefing with a magnifying glass on. right, for this evening. The nature of the decay and
Right.
rot of civilizational and cultural and artistic
Well,
decay
most of
and
them
rot.
probably have some awareness of everything we're saying. We just have our own little predictions and viewpoints. I do like how China, when they really came to light how far they were willing to go to protect themselves. When was it? When was this? Now, I think it was at least a year or two ago. Some feminists online in China were trying to group together to complain about something, and they were all just shut down completely. I remember seeing pictures of these blue and purple haired Chinese women. And they were just immediately shut down. They were kicked off the internet. It was all just the government just cracked down, shut them up. It was like, nope, shut up, you're done, and it was over.
Yes, when problems rise, there are reflexive solutions to them, right? So when the Chinese and the Russians and the Indians observe the genuine civilizational decay of the West and think to themselves, considering how bad things have gotten, while we are observing them, can we please take some notes as to how not to get to this position that the West has, by design, been forced to, be in because it's managed by hostile occupiers, literally in all of the systems, political, banking, media, etc. Anyway, the point of the matter is that people that can notice the patterns will be at least somewhat safe from them because they can notice predators. And the people that are not knowledgeable of the patterns 100% will fall prey to it. If they are gullible and they are, what's the word? And they do not have a spine to assert their own consciousness and will with a capital W, let's say, they will eventually become victims to the liberal spastics and their dysgenic death cult. So that is how I view overall the situation, sir.
Yes, that
The
is it. But
dysgenics is how we win. Their dysgenics are so incredibly bad. I mean, look at you. I'm sure you have eyes, right? You have eyes and ears, and you can
yes.
hear the soy in the vocal cords, etc.
Oh,
Dysgenics,
the
okay. But
just
here's
today I
what you.
heard there was some Americans in a bookshop, and they were
Yes.
their upspeak was just. I was immediately so revolted. I was like, oh my god, I had to leave. I couldn't even stand overhearing them for a moment. These, well, like middle-aged American ladies. What was I going to say though? I did have a point I wanted to squeeze in there. So this is how I see it. You might put it this way to be a bit more specific. We're living in the American Empire, really, and the American Empire is on the way out. It's going to fail. It may take 10 years. It may take like a couple of years. It may take another 100 years. It's like the fall of Rome, etc. Right? And so we're caught up in that, really. And across Europe, you and I live in Europe. We're more concerned with that. What is likely to happen and the way things, the outlook of the world and the likelihoods of what's going to happen. America will eventually fail. You're right. From this competency crisis, it will fail and it will retreat from the world if they're not. If the decline is not properly or soberly managed somehow, just for the love, just by God Himself, by sheer luck, they will not and cannot start a nuclear war before they retreat and divide up and lose their power. They have tried and are trying more actively than anybody ever has to exterminate European people, and they've been doing a very good job. But if and when they fail, hopefully sooner than later. Frankly, I hope this is not too dicey a thing to say for you. I'm just saying. I mean, I don't think this is too great. I hear John Mearsheimer and people say things like it. So, then countries that have retained their sanity and their power and their understanding, places like Russia and China, frankly, places like this, if they're still around, if they haven't succumbed to death and war from the dying empire, they will be the new power blocks in the world, and they are very likely, one or both of them, to move into what is left of Europe. We're going to be weakened and destroyed, as you say. We may be living in our little parallel societies, those of us that don't want to die out. But overall, we're dealing with at least half of us are brainwashed and hopeless. I don't know. I can
Hey,
see them
by the
moving
way,
in.
sir,
Moving in.
I have a question for you. Would you rather your progeny speak Russian or Arabic?
Well, yeah. If I don't know about Arabic, because when America's gone,
Mm,
there's a falsehood of strength being promoted by anyone being scared of being attack helicoptered and bombed by America. There's a natural and real power in the world that it requires, shall I say, nations of certain ability, and of those once America would be off the scene, if and when that would finally happen, they would not be Arab countries overall. There would be a lot of Arabs in. This is what I'm saying about the competing power blocks and how the nations are going to whatever is left of European nations are going to split up within themselves, and the original nation will hopefully survive in certain areas. But then on top of that, I think there will be a very strong influence from whatever country survives the fall of America, whatever countries survive the fall of America, and then want to exert their influence upon the world. And frankly, I don't even China, even if China were to take over all of Europe, it would not be as miserable and shitty and as an outright attempt to exterminate all the people as we're getting from America. So if you don't have many good options, you can at least be happy that America is in this decline. We have to survive the decline and fall of America at this point, is what I would say. And
Yes.
this is not
By the
something I
way,
talk about in
sir,
my book. What?
scenarios of civilizational decline caused by rampant dysgenics is merely just it's a very important piece of the puzzle, right? So if you understand this, then you are protected and defended against it, right? You and your entire family, most of them, I would expect, most of the families of people that have acute pattern recognition and awareness of evolutionary threats, as the ones posed by the aforementioned liberal spastic psychotics in their death cult. Um, if you know about it, you have a degree of protection against it. So, the saving grace in this phase of the cycle would be lethal acute awareness for yourself and your progeny to the dysgenic for the culture, civilization, and in group tendencies of the liberals. But you can also comprehend, if you have, not you necessarily, but anyone, you can also comprehend that it springs from two very distinct and discernible factors. The first is incompetence and weakness, right? And the second is evil, as in spite, envy, hatred,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
etc. They nurture incompetence by being a weakness and victimhood worshipping cult, right?
Yeah.
So you get incompetence, you get the competence crisis, right? On the one hand, from their internalized ideology, right, of weakness is okay and good, fat is a okay and good, yada yada. The list goes on. But incompetence and evil are not rewarded when it comes to being good at reproducing and tending to a family unit, right? So those who cannot exist within the pack and survive despite the conditions in it and reproduce regardless of those conditions are thrown by the wayside in terms of evolutionary, what's it called? Lines, right? So
Okay.
that is the point of hope and aspiration that I can assert for you, me, the audience, etc. Um, Dysgenics is their defeat, as in no one wants to be around mouth frothing, incompetent and evil people. So they'll get a reputation of that permanently throughout all of human history, right? And then therefore we inoculate ourselves and our progeny to them, right?
Well, the crux
So
for the larger population is going to be the point of where it comes together. There will be a meeting point, like everything else, where time condenses to that single moment, and that single moment will be the point. It will be like a literally a moment where the growing ineptitude and incompetence cr- creates such a situation of disaster, and that comes up with their as the incompetence crisis is created by their belief and their attitude. Things like what's the term? What is the word for when you must you basically can't have like white men in a job, and you have to hire women and
the word that
minorities.
you're looking for is misandry and outgroup preference.
No, no, that's like a professional corporate word. Like what is it called? Oh, Shit, I can't remember. It's some silly invented, basically sort of leftist corporate word for the system of hiring anybody but a white male, basically, for any kind of sort of
Oh,
job.
yes, let me tell you it. It's equity, diversity, and
Yeah,
inclusion.
something
That
like
shit.
this. Yeah, that sort of thing. Yeah. Um, so what was my point with that? So where there's going to be a point where that ethic, that value system that they so believe in, meets with the rising incompetence and the rise of disaster. And when they when that moment comes where one is at equal power with the other or greater, where the actual incompetence is so great that the value system cannot carry on, that's going to be a great explosive moment, I think.
I hear you, sir. By the
Yeah.
way, I do have a guest over, and we're approaching the 1 hour mark. I think that keeping
Okay.
it short but highly insightful, with summary bullet point takes, is the best for the audience because when they come onto your streams and when they come onto my streams, the usual expectation is when I click on this, I'm going to one, be informed of something or some things that I didn't know about, and two, I will be mildly, if not greatly, entertained. Right. So the benchmark for my standards of production, etc., on your stream and others, is the audience going to get highly digested insights, right,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
on the causality webs of the political and civilizational happenings of the recent times, and two, are they going to be entertained, right? So
Yes.
I
Yes.
personally give a massive shit about the audience leaving the stream learning something about the nature of civilizational decay and rot, which does not only affect the arts but also infest civilization, etc., to ponder on it. This little chat, by the way, is not the entirety of the body of work that we could talk about civilizational rot and decay and cultural rot and decay, etc. Right?
Yes.
So keeping it short and precise as a summary briefing, I think,
Yes.
is
Good
very
idea.
important for the audiences. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
shall we wrap it up here, sir? If that's all right,
That's good. Yeah.
at the one
That's
hour
fine. Yeah.
mark, yes.
That's yeah. Yeah. No problem. And maybe in the next one, let's do something more specific to the book, since the goal of this is really to promote the audiobooks, and we maybe we'll pick a certain chapter and really sort of talk about it a bit or something.
Yes,
We'll do that in the
absolutely.
next one.
We can definitely do that, sir. But I think that a summary, briefing, introductory preface of some sort, the specific word eludes me, but basically giving people an idea about the certain tangential topics to the book that are incredibly important to study in tangent with the book, right? So
Yeah.
civilizational rot and decay in
Hmm.
the in general is worth paying attention to and noticing, but the book specifically focuses on it in art. But
Yeah.
art is directly symbiotic and correlated or parallel to culture and civilization at
It
every
is the it
scenario,
is the it
right?
is
Right.
the it is the ultimate what's the word, manifestation of culture. Yeah. That's all. I
Mm.
don't want to say that.
Anyways, thank you ever so much for the show today. May I recommend something along the lines of do you have the title in place presently? This is live, right?
Live. Yep. Yeah, we're live.
Okay, wonderful. Okie doke, send me the link to it when it's done, and I'll turn it into an MP3 for my audiences as well as the last episode, if that's all right, sir. Yes.
Okay. Sounds good. Yeah. And we'll do the next
Righto.
one when we are able. Well, not tomorrow or anything, but in a few more days, we'll have another one, and that'll be
Yep,
that.
sounds good, sir. It's a case of if, as, when wanted and needed. But I think that it would be 10 to 15 or so episodes to go through all of the tangential topics, maybe less, but the book is so very insightful and detailed in the nature of the decline and fall of Western art. That's the title. But the point is, the book is very detailed and good and specific. Go buy it. On that note, and it will be educational and insightful,
And you can
guaranteed.
listen to it now.
It
You can
will,
listen to it now. You don't have. You can listen to it
yes.
in your car. You have the you have the many convenient
Yes.
options in regards to
It
books.
exists in audiobook format now, The Decline and Fall of Western Art. Go have a gander. Anyway, toodaloo, ladies and gentlemen, signing off. Till next time, good night. Thank you for having me on, sir. Bye-bye.
Yeah. No, okay. Well, goodbye. And goodbye to the rest of you.